Matt, sometimes you need a creature that is not just terrifying, but also the size of a small house.
And that's why we're bringing 6 supersized animals to your game.
That's how we roll. 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 That's how we roll.
Welcome to the Goblin's Corner. My name is Eric.
And I'm Matt.
And tonight,
We're talking about dire beasts.
that's right. Dire beasts have always been a favorite of Matt and mine ever since 3rd edition D&D. And tonight we're going to bring dire beasts to your game for 5th edition, show you how to do it.
Absolutely.
And we've got 6 amazing dire beasts that I must say, Matt, they're pretty ridiculous.
They're fun, and that's the purpose here. They're going to be mostly stat light, right? Like, we're not going into strength dex con. We're going to give you the information to build dire animals and then give you some examples that we came up with.
Absolutely. Dire beasts in general, if you're unfamiliar with the type of creature, were bigger, meaner, and more monstrous versions of ordinary animals.
They also appeared more feral and violent than other animals.
Absolutely. And this appearance caused the descriptions to be either prehistoric, lots of plates and blades and such, or demonic in some cases as well. And so for tonight, we're going to kind of take that description and have it reflect the monsters that we've created as well.
In many cases, dire animals were more resistant to damage or certain magical spells like enrage or sleep.
So on that note, what we're going to do is incorporate some of those elements with our creatures tonight as well.
Sure.
So just assume they can't be put to sleep. They're too ferocious.
And that only makes sense.
And that only makes sense. Now, any regular creature, Matt, can conceivably be a dire beastie.
Yes.
And we totally think you should make any dire beastie for fun and profit.
I also agree. I also think the druid in your group should be required to make some dire beasties so that they've got some in their back pocket for changes.
I think that's a lot of fun, too. But let's say, Matt, you're a lazy DM, like us.
Sure.
We're lazy DMs.
Sure.
And you wanted to make a dire squirrel really quickly. How would you go about doing that? Well, we have a quick cheat sheet for you to use.
So you take the base stats of the normal animal.
Okay.
You increase it a couple of size categories.
So 1 to 2 size categories. So a large creature can become huge or even gargantuan if you wish.
Sure.
I mean, hey, large to huge makes sense, but there's nothing stopping you from taking a tiny creature and making it large.
That is true.
Generally, 1 to 2 size categories are best.
Right.
You don't want like a shrew, a dire shrew, to be the size of a house. Although, that would be hilarious.
A gargantuan shark, on the other hand, is
Delightful.
a behemoth.
Yes, we're going to need a bigger boat.
Very true.
Yeah. Another thing you can do is you can triple the hit points. And why would we do that, Matt?
Because you want them to have to fight it longer?
And because dire beasties are
Bigger.
They're bigger and meaner.
You can also give it natural armor,
Mm-hmm.
and you should.
You absolutely should.
Anywhere from +1 to +5, depending on how terrible you're feeling. And for me, what description you want to give it.
And that's a really good point because not only are they nasty, but their description should also be terrifying as well. In many dire creatures, it was the natural armor was reflected in like weird bony plates or protuberances. Sometimes, though, it was just really thick matted fur that acted like armor.
Absolutely. The dire bear had plates on it.
And thick fur.
So
whatever freaks your players out the most is what you should do in the description.
And you can absolutely add some good old-fashioned dinosaur spikes and stuff like that for giggles.
Yeah. You want to go Pleistocene with this thing? Do it.
Oh, my God. Sorry, I just Triceratops bear, right? With the plate.
Triceratops bear, yes. I think that would be great. Not only is he spearing the adventurer, but then he's eating him afterwards.
He uses the horns to throw them in the air and then catches them in his mouth.
That's a good point. Yeah, I like that.
Other stat increases for a dire animal. You're going to want to think about strength and con.
Beef them up.
Right, because they're larger.
Yeah.
If you want to make it super awful, if it's something that's already agile, who doesn't want a horse-sized squirrel that's also super agile?
And super strong.
Yeah.
I think that's a great idea as well.
That'd be a great mount.
You can and often should increase their attack dice by 1 to 2 dice increases. So if it was doing a D4, it becomes a D6 instead, or even a D8.
Sure. Their claws are bigger, their teeth are bigger. It only makes sense.
And this is represented by the fact that dire animals are often more vicious and deadlier than your typical beastie.
Sure.
And so feel free to embellish that with descriptions. What can we do with the description? You can make their talons look like scythe blades, or what else?
Teeth the size of daggers, right?
Yeah.
Go for your standard fantasy fare when you're doing these descriptions.
If it's got hooves, make them cut into like it could pierce armor or something like that. All kinds of weird spikes and bony growths would be great.
Anything you can to pack in a little prehistory, because some people use the demonic side of it, but these are supposed to be more wild than wild. They're not actually demonic.
They're super wild.
Exactly.
What else can we do? We can make it rage, and you should make it rage.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's a dire squirrel. If it takes damage, it's going to lose its nuts.
Nice. I see what you did there. Also, give it multiple attacks.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody loves a good claw bite combo.
And finally, you can give it a fearful roar, of which they must make a save. And yes, the dire squirrel will definitely have a screech of 1,000.
I have been cursed out by a squirrel. Like anytime you get too close to the tree that its kids are in, right? They'll stand up about halfway up
Chitter
the
at
tree
you
and
for
just
a while.
chitter at you. But imagine that when it's horse-sized.
Dire chittering.
Right. That goes from, oh, he's adorably mad to, oh, this thing could tear me apart. There's a very
I kind of
different.
feel that it would be madness-inducing if it was a squirrel. So it'd be almost like a gibbering mouther,
Sure.
and you just driven mad by its chittering.
And that's the thing, is you should definitely be willing to change the flavor on some of this stuff.
So basically what we're saying is if you want to make a dire animal, you want to make a bigger, meaner, and more powerful version of the beast that you're using.
Right. It is still an animal.
And that's it.
Yeah.
Right? Make it bigger, give it a more terrifying description, make it do more damage, make it rage, and if it's a squirrel, make it chitter and drive you mad.
Sure.
So with that being said, Matt, we've got 6 beasties for tonight.
Indeed.
And the first one is yours. And Matt, we've talked about this. There's been a private joke between Matt and I about mooses being dire animals anyway.
Right.
But Matt has actually created a dire moose.
Now, since we're getting started, each creature will have a description, some special abilities, and some lore.
Sounds great.
And that's how we'll break them down.
And as we mentioned, we're not doing a whole lot of stats. So please change the dice to reflect your game and, quite frankly, the CR of the encounter you wish to have.
Sure.
If you want to straight up murder your heroes, go ahead. Make it do horrible amounts of attacks. Certainly the dire moose will do horrible amounts of attacks. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I
Moose
read the
are
description. It's nasty. So since the people playing the home game have not heard the description of the dire moose, why don't you give us the description?
Certainly. Dire moose stand at nearly 15 foot at the shoulder and weigh around 4,000 pounds. It is a towering presence in the wild.
Yeah, 15-foot tall moose, man. You can see that above the trees.
It's about twice as tall as a regular moose.
Sure.
Its dark matted fur is thick and coarse, providing it with armor-like protection against the harsh environment. And its eyes almost glow with feral intensity.
That moose is going to mess you up.
If you've ever seen a moose that is not happy, they look insane.
He's about to take your Tim Hortons coffee and run.
Your maple crawler.
Don't take my maple crawler, man.
The beast's antlers and teeth are its most striking features. The antlers span 20 feet across with jagged blade-like points that can impale enemies with a single strike. Unlike a normal moose, its teeth are serrated and sharp at the front.
Yeah, this moose don't play around, man. 20-foot spikes. That's a lot of spikes.
Moose antlers are ridiculous in the real world. We just turned up the volume, that's all.
Absolutely. We've got some special abilities for this dire moose. Matt, the first one I believe is a gore attack, which is appropriate since it's got 20-foot spears for antlers.
Sure. It uses its massive antlers to gore opponents, often throwing them to the ground with bone-crushing force.
So it spears you, shakes its head, and then you fly 30 feet.
Yes. If, as a DM, you want to give it a movement-affecting ability, you could have it do an antler toss. Instead of throwing it down, it throws people outwards.
Yeah.
Boom.
Or throws it into a tree.
Yep.
Or throws it into its mouth.
It has hooves as an attack, naturally. Its blade-like hooves are deadly and capable of trampling foes into the ground and can crush bones with ease. It's 4,000 pounds. I mean...
It could turn a paladin in a suit of armor into a tin can.
Sure. It's got a bite attack. I will not make a Monty Python joke. We're going to get through this one. Its bite takes a large, bloody chunks out of its victim.
Yum, yum.
There we go.
It's got a fearsome bellow, which, as we mentioned, give it a bellow.
Yes. The dire moose's resonant bellow can be heard for miles, striking fear into the hearts of those who hear it.
Probably make a wisdom check or something like that to save.
I would not make it a miles wide fear effect.
No.
It can just be heard for that far.
Yeah, but it definitely is going to strike the fear in someone if they know what it is.
Yes. The important thing to remember is this thing is big. It is the size of a house, and its power makes it difficult to take down.
Yeah, something like that could require a coordinated effort for combatants to attack.
Yeah, this is going to take an adventuring group or a very high-level adventurer.
I mean, you got to get a stepladder just to get to the head.
That's true. Yeah, you're not going to be able to brain it in a single swing.
No, you can't. You can't reach up there.
The halfling is literally going to have to chop it off at the knees just to reach anything important.
For the halfling, it's basically a megafauna.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the lore of the dire moose.
The dire moose is a solitary creature known to roam dense, cold forests, taigas, and tundras, where it reigns as an apex predator.
Yeah, because it's the biggest, meanest thing in the snowy woods.
Yeah, until you get to actual fantasy creatures like white dragons, it's basically at the top of the chain.
Keep in mind, these things are technically natural beasts.
Yes. Unlike its herbivorous cousins, the dire moose has developed a taste for flesh, particularly enjoying large game or even humanoids that wander into its territory.
Yes, it feasts on flesh.
Speaking of its territory, they are highly territorial and will aggressively defend its domain from perceived threats, whether they be rival predators or unfortunate adventurers.
Definitely unfortunate adventurers in my campaign.
And I say defend because it doesn't defend anything. It just smashes anything that is in its roaming area. During mating season, dire moose are even more dangerous as males engage in brutal battles, clashing their enormous antlers with enough force to shatter trees and boulders.
That is a scene to behold. Can you imagine you're walking through the forest, you see this moose. And it's a dire moose, right? So it's got bony plates on them and stuff. It's got giant antlers that can just shear through trees.
Sure.
And these two bucks are just clashing. And it sounds like an earthquake.
That's what I was thinking. The noise would be immense, just huge.
And this dude takes a swipe and cuts a piece of a boulder in half. And it hits the halfling thief. It kills him dead. I mean, think about that mental picture. That'd be awesome, first off. Suck for the halfling, but, you know.
It's a great way to murder an NPC.
That's right.
Despite their immense size, dire moose are surprisingly stealthy, using the cover of dense undergrowth to ambush prey or intruders.
Yeah, because you think he's a tree.
If you've never seen video of a moose breaking a tree line in real life, they are stupid sneaky for something their size. It is ridiculous. Now, northern tribes, humanoids, and trolls have been known to try to domesticate these surly creatures for battle steeds to little effect.
They're too mean to cultivate. Can you imagine a troll getting its ass beat by one of these things? Because trolls are like, what, 12 feet tall?
Yeah.
Something like that?
Yeah.
10, 12 feet tall? Which means it can ride one of these beasts.
Theoretically,
Theoretically.
Yes. If it can hold on.
I mean, it is what it is.
Or it could get eaten by one.
Absolutely. So that is the dire moose.
Yes, indeed.
Terror of the taiga forest.
Now, we're going to pivot pretty hard here for yours. Tell us about the dire pigeon.
Ah, yes, the terror of the dire city. Here we
Sure
go.
thing.
It's great. As you go about your daily rounds in the city, you hear the dreaded crrr as a titanic bird of dubious proportions assaults you and your loaf of bread. Because it would.
Sure.
Wants that bread. An enormous and intimidating version of the common city bird, dire pigeons are twisted by the forces of nature into a creature of terrifying size. And pigeons are kind of terrifying in mass anyway. But a big-ass pigeon, that's even more terrifying. The dire pigeon stands about 5 feet tall with a mottled gray wingspan reaching nearly 30 feet, and it is a hulking avian menace. And it stinks, because it's a pigeon, right? An oily sheen on their feathers reflect the light, giving it an eerie, predatory look, and its tough beak and claws look fearsome.
Now, it's a pigeon, right? But some pigeons are gorgeous.
Mhm.
Some pigeons have like that truly iridescent sheen to them. I'm just saying, those giant feathers could be used for something.
Oh, they definitely can. And interestingly enough, one of the effects is the oily sheen.
Oh, right. Well, tell us about the special abilities in combat then.
All right. Well, it can peck and gore you. So it's got a thick, gnarly beak, and now it's hooked. So the beak went from kind of like this to like a hooked beak. So it can tear through flesh with ease. Can also have a claw attack, as birds often do.
Sure.
The beast's legs are heavily armored, and its claws can crush bones and shred armor.
Fantastic.
All in the effort to get bread.
Sure. But instead of eating crumbs, it eats whole loaves.
That's right. It has oily feathers. The feathers reflect the light in such a way as to make it difficult to attack, as per the blur spell.
Nice.
So when it's coming at you, it's kind of, the image is kind of blurred.
Sure.
As it bites your head off. It has pack tactics because birds are communal, particularly pigeons.
Sure.
Clever girl. And it can poop on you.
Because
It's a pigeon.
it's a pigeon.
Yes.
Sure. And that is a disease attack, because it is in real life.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's the lore behind these giant pigeons?
Like their smaller cousins, dire pigeons are scavengers by nature, often seen circling above towns, large city dumps, and even battlefields, waiting to descend and feast upon whatever's available. While omnivorous, they have developed a taste for meat and are not above hunting live prey should the opportunity arise. They're 5 feet tall.
Sure.
They can take out a cat, probably a small humanoid, certainly.
Sure.
30-foot wingspan, they could carry a grown human,
Yes.
and that would suck. You imagine walking about your day again with your loaf of bread, maybe a baguette.
Sure.
It's some kind of French city, right? There's a lot of bread, and they just descend upon you. These giant birds are known to roost communally in high, inaccessible places like cliffs, large buildings, ruined towers, or even the tops of ancient trees, because they like to roost high.
Sure.
Many cities make use of dire pigeons by taming them with food, and if raised in captivity, can make excellent aerial steeds using their blur ability against other aerial creatures. These would be great for, say, Waterdeep.
That would be very cool. I also like the idea of dire messenger pigeons, which run taxi services, basically.
I was thinking of a version of these to be homing pigeons.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, they would, I mean, these are very large birds, so they could conceivably carry cargo or people back and forth unerringly. That'd be kind of fun too.
Absolutely.
But again, just a big, nasty bird. That's the dire pigeon.
Right.
Now, next up, we have something funky.
Speaking of big and nasty.
Speaking of big and nasty, Matt's come up with a dire skunk. Matt, talk to us about the dire skunk.
All right, we'll start with a description then. As the party rides through the forest, they catch a whiff of a noxious stench directly in front of them. There, in the center of the road, stands a large, 6-foot-tall, black and white armored terror.
Ooh, scary.
Claw marks litter the surrounding trees, and its massive, bushy tail turns and aims for the caravan.
And roll a save. Awesome. Big, nasty skunk, right? Big,
Sure.
armored, bushy-tailed. It's a big-ass skunk.
Yeah,
That's
that happens to be naturally armored also.
Yes, which is pretty nasty. Let's talk about some special abilities and maybe the combat of this thing.
Okay. Obviously, the first special ability is going to be Stench Spray.
Yes.
It's going to recharge on a 5 or 6, or however violent you want your game to be.
Yeah, could be every round.
The dire skunk's signature ability. It can release a foul-smelling spray in a 30-foot cone. All creatures in the area must make a Constitution saving throw. We gave it a 14.
You can make it whatever you want.
Yep. Volume up or down based on you.
That's right.
On a failed save, the creatures are poisoned and blinded for a minute.
And they stink for at least a week.
Yes. Creatures that succeed on the save evade it and take none of these conditions. The poison condition lasts for 1 minute or until they spend an action cleaning the spray off with water, alcohol, tomato soup, whatever.
Furious tomato scrubbing.
Yes.
While it's probably tearing you limb from limb.
Hey, you know.
So it's got a nasty stench spray.
Sure. It also has a stench aura.
Oh, yeah, because they funky.
Mm-hmm. Any creature that starts its turn within 10 feet of the dire skunk must make a Constitution saving throw, 13, or be poisoned for as long as they remain in range.
So in 10 feet of this thing, you're going to have to hold your breath.
And in this case, it's more of a stench than an actual poison, right? Like your eyes are watering, your nose is running.
It's like a troglodyte.
Exactly. It just stinks so bad that you can't concentrate.
Sure.
The dire skunk is an ambush predator. It has advantage on stealth checks in forested and underground areas and its large size belies its ability to hide among the dense foliage or the shadow of caves.
So they could sneak up on you and tear you asunder, spray you.
Indeed, they have the sneaky sneak.
Love it.
They also have savage claws. In melee, the dire skunk can make 2 claw attacks. These attacks often follow up after spraying its foes.
Just gonna spray you in the eyes,
and then tear you to pieces.
coat the entire caravan, and then just rip it to shreds.
Sure.
Love it.
Finally, they have thick hide. The dire skunk's dense fur and bony plates along the top of its back grant it resistance to non-magical bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage.
So it's just really tough.
Yeah.
And aren't they like relatives of badgers?
They are. You could also, if you were feeling particularly mean, give it rage.
And you know what? You should. After it takes a certain amount of damage, it should go fly into a rage, right?
Yep.
Just mess somebody up. What kind of lore do we have with this dire skunk?
Dire skunks are native to dark forests and caves, but can theoretically live anywhere with a robust ecosystem and ample food.
If it's got enough things it can eat, it can just live wherever it needs to.
Yep. Their spray acts as a deterrent to potential predators or encroaching settlers. I mean, it is what it is.
I'm not going to settle around there.
No. It is so strong that many stories tell of entire hunting parties being forced to abandon their pursuits after encountering one.
Can you imagine the adventuring party that sets out into the forest for, insert quest?
Sure.
They come across this, how big is it again? Like
6 foot tall.
Yeah, a 6 foot tall skunk. They get sprayed head to toe with a 6 foot tall skunk spray.
So, I mean, basically, it's a Clydesdale skunk.
Yeah. And they're like, nope, I'm done. I'm out of this forest. I'm done.
Well, if you're hunting shot for the day, you stink so bad that everything else can smell you coming.
Yep.
Dire skunks often dig elaborate burrows with their claws or live in caves. And abandoned burrows make fine homes for troglodytes who don't mind the stench.
Because they already stink too.
Right. A few brave rangers and druids have also managed to befriend and train these beasts as companions, though they still carry the lingering odor that keeps them at arm's length or, a little longer than arm's
I
length.
want to be the ranger that rides one of these things into battle.
So hear me out. Warforged Ranger.
He doesn't smell. He can't tell that he's funky. That is perfect. That is absolutely perfect. A Warforged Ranger rides with a dire skunk
mount.
that he rides into the battle. This thing's tearing warriors limb from limb, spraying the battlefield. Warforged don't care.
Yeah, if any of you do art, I need to see that.
This is a weapon of war.
Desperately.
This is a weapon of war.
It is 100%.
He is not a ranger. He is a battlefield master.
Well, I was just thinking, okay, in some worlds, orcs are very anti-natural, right? Like they'll come and wipe out forests and stuff like that to use the materials. So you've got this warforged on a skunk that just comes charging into this wall of orcs and just hoses them down and then mauls them.
Chemical warfare.
Yep.
I love that. Stick that bad boy in Sharn someplace. That's what created Sire, my friends. A bunch of dire skunks.
It was just dire skunks.
Just a bunch of dire skunks.
It was a druid circle that just kept summoning them.
All right. So that's this is dire skunk.
Yes,
the
indeed.
Funky engine of destruction. Speaking of things that are funky, we also have what, Matt?
It's time for the question of the week.
All right. Hit me, Matt. What's the question of the week this week?
Like to keep things on theme? So let's try this. If you could personally dire an animal, either one that you know of or one that, exists out in the world, what animal would you turn into a dire creature to use as a mount?
As a mount?
Yes.
That's an interesting question. I'm going to choose one that I think is more amusing than probably useful, but I'm going to say a dire ferret.
Nice.
Because it would be this giant ferret that I ride on its, just be kind of, and it kind of, ferrets kind of like lope along.
Mm-hmm.
So it wouldn't be a great ride.
It's almost like a cross between a wiggle and a lope. Yeah.
But I know that when I'm in a dungeon, my dire ferret's going to help me steal that treasure.
Yes, 100%.
He'll probably steal it before I can. And you know what? That's fine.
He's going to be outside eating the rest of the supplies with the loot by the time you get there.
I'm going to name him Loot Box.
Nice.
Loot Box the dire ferret. He's got bony plates.
Little saddlebags of holding.
A little absolutely saddlebags of holding. Yeah, teach him how to scurry the dead. Like put them in a big pile and sort through them.
Sure.
Be great. What about you? What kind of dire animal would you create as a mount?
That's a great, I thought I had answers, but I didn't think about a ferret.
I know it's good.
It's great. So I've discussed before dire parrots.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I love about a parrot is they've basically got a human lifespan. So barring anything awful, you've got a mount for life. Having a mount for 80 years is solid. They're also very affectionate, very loyal, and
They're smart.
they're smart. And you can teach them to curse out your enemies as you're flying past.
Flying into battle on this beautiful parrot, brightly colored wings amidst the jungle sky. You come down and it's got like a lance in its claws,
Sure.
spearing your enemies, and it's talking the whole time.
Or give it like the cockfighting razor spurs
Yeah.
so it can do flyby attacks.
But it's the talking that's the fun
Oh,
part.
yeah.
Because it's totally, it's insulting them. You just teach it all a bunch of insults.
In multiple languages.
Multiple languages. I love that. That's a great answer. I almost like that more than the weasel, to be honest. Of course, we're always interested in your answer to the question of the week, and if you have one, hit us up at Goblin's Corner on all the various socials. And Matt, if you're watching YouTube, what can you do?
You can comment down below. We love the engagement, but also it's the easiest place for us to answer you realistically.
Yeah, because I don't check the socials, and Matt hasn't lately.
That's probably fair.
So we're talking dire beasties, and we've got 3 more dire animals that we've provided for you, and I think the next one is mine.
It is, and since we were discussing dire avians, tell us all about the dire penguin.
The dreaded dire penguin.
Sure.
This one makes the emperor penguin look like a pygmy. This 12-foot-tall, imposing bird dominates the icy tundras and glacial waters of the poles. 12 foot tall, my friends.
Sure.
Massive ripples of blubber coat their bodies underneath hardened dorsal plates. While large and flightless, these predators are surprisingly agile in and out of the water.
Okay.
Because it's a penguin, right?
Sure.
Their wings are equipped with serrated spikes jutting from the tip that can shred a creature as large as a shark with little difficulty.
Nice.
Whoosh.
The penguins get to fight back.
Hey, man, he may not be able to, fly or anything, but he can certainly flap you to death with his serrated blade wings.
Speaking of serrated blades, tell us about their special abilities in combat.
Well, the first thing we have under combat is a slippery tackle. The dire penguin can slide across icy surfaces with incredible speed. Can you imagine the mental picture of this thing coming at you like a bobsled?
Yeah, there's something video game about that I love. I almost would expect the whoosh lines.
Yes. So as a bonus action, it can charge up to 30 feet in a straight line and make a melee attack with its beak. If it hits, the target must make a strength saving throw or be knocked prone. I gave it a strength 15, but you could do whatever you want.
Sure. Makes perfect sense to me, though.
It's got a razor fin and a beak attack because it's going to bite you and, swipe you with its razor fins, right? So it can make 2 attacks each round. Both of those are slashing.
Okay.
It has an aquatic assault. While in the water, it has advantage on attack rolls and can move through difficult terrain without expending extra movement. So kelp forests and stuff like it just, it swims, right?
Yeah.
It's built for speed in the water.
Right.
Its swimming speed, speaking of which, is 50 feet, allowing it to ambush prey from beneath the ice. If the ice is 3 feet thick or less, the dire penguin can burst forth from beneath the creature.
Nice.
Come up like an orca or like Jaws.
Sure. I love it.
And finally, because we wanted to give it some damage, reduction, it has frost-resistant blubber and plates. So the thick insulating feathers of the dire penguin grant it resistance to cold damage. Makes sense, lives in the poles.
Sure.
And the bony plates on its back and head are exceptional, providing a very high AC.
I love it.
It's just a massive, nasty penguin.
Yeah. It is something that will appear ridiculous right up until it starts doing damage.
Just kind of hear it go doobie, doobie, doo, and then just kind of slice at you.
There's a select group of people who will get that joke.
That's true.
What's the lure for these little guys, these big guys?
Unlike their smaller, more docile counterparts, dire penguins are aggressive hunters, known to prey on seals, large fish, sharks, and even polar bears in a pinch. 12 foot tall, man. It can take down a polar bear.
You know what? I want to see that fight.
With difficulty.
Yeah, I want to see that fight.
Explorers' tales of seeing giant shadows beneath the ice are often attributed to the penguin's ability to glide silently through the freezing waters.
Sure.
Undersea ghosts before they burst forth and swallow the explorer. There are even reports of entire fishing ships being attacked by these creatures who view any intrusion into their hunting grounds as a threat.
At this point, they're starting to act like orcas.
As a matter of fact, yes, they kind of do act like a pod of orcas. Dire penguins are thought to have once been the guardians of ancient, now ruined ice cities, where they acted as protectors of long-lost arcane secrets buried beneath the frozen tundra.
I love that. I also love the idea that legend should be common enough knowledge that anybody who looks into it might actually find something.
It is known.
Yeah.
In other lore, the dire penguins are often seen as omens of disaster. When one appears, it is said a fierce storm or glacial upheaval is not far behind.
Nice.
Again, just big nasty birds.
Sure.
Dire penguins. Now, Matt, this is a common thing we've talked about animals before in our megafauna, and I believe you mentioned anteaters at one point.
For the chimera mounts.
Yes.
I think I mentioned
and
it.
you have come up with a dire anteater.
Yes.
And I must say, it is glorious.
We're swapping locations drastically from glacial to tropical,
yeah.
but
Or savanna even.
or savanna, yeah.
Yeah. So talk to me about the dire anteater.
All right. This enormous, lightly brown-furred and armored beast lives in dense jungles, savannas, and wherever monstrous insects are found.
Because it eats insects.
Right. Standing at about 10 foot long and towering over 6 foot tall on all fours, the dire anteater is covered in thick, leathery skin and coarse, bristling fur, which is true of a regular anteater.
It's just a giant-sized version of an anteater.
Right. With a whip-like tongue and talons larger than a longsword, few creatures can withstand its relentless hunger and ferocity.
Anteaters will mess you up, man, with those talons.
Yes.
They dig into, termite mounds.
Yeah, they can literally punch through concrete with their thumbs.
Cool. So I'm assuming that something with the talons and tongue are going to be part of your special abilities.
Indeed, we're going to start with the tongue whip.
Okay, talk to me about a tongue whip.
The dire anteater's long, sticky tongue can lash out at creatures up to 15 foot away, doing bludgeoning damage.
Like Indiana Jones's whip.
Exactly. If the attack hits, they are grappled and restrained, with a DC 14 to escape,
Okay,
as the anteater attempts to drag them towards its mouth.
that's really cool. To swallow them whole.
Indeed.
Yeah, I mean that's how you go after a giant bug.
100%.
What else we got there?
Anteaters have excavator's claws. The dire anteater's massive claws can shred through dirt, wood, and even stone with slashing damage. The anteater has advantage on attack rolls when fighting creatures with an exoskeleton.
I would even give it like a siege ability to attack structures.
Speaking of which, they have tunneling fury.
Oh.
The dire anteater can burrow through soft ground at a speed of 30 feet per round, while underground it can use its tremor sense 30 feet to detect creatures walking above and allowing it to launch surprise attacks by erupting up from the earth.
Just burst force from the earth.
Additionally, its burrowing does double damage to structures.
Oh, so there you go. Can you imagine this thing tearing apart a stone castle? I can.
Absolute.
And you should.
Can you imagine being the person living in that castle and just all of a sudden this giant thumb sword comes launching through the wall?
Just punches through the wall, takes the paladin, tears him asunder, and then the claw comes back and tears another person.
Sure.
Yeah, that'd be great. Man, this thing could just wreak havoc on structures, though.
Yes. They also have earth armor. The dire anteater's hide is incredibly tough and covered with a mixture of hardened skin and mud from constant burrowing. It has resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage from non-magical attacks. Its natural armor provides it with a high AC. Much like most of the other dire things, it's resistant to normal damage because they're just so tough.
It's got thick matted fur. It's got mud on it. That thick matted fur. I mean, you could think in like thick fur, right?
Right.
Like carpet.
Like a couple inches.
Yeah, like a couple inches of carpet that's caked in mud. You're going to try to attack that with a bludgeoning instrument, just go bounce right off him. Anteater don't care.
Right. And when you stab it, you lose 2 inches of stabbing depth to mud, basically.
That's right. Anteater takes what he wants. All right. What's the lore behind the dire anteater?
Basically, a dire anteater is a walking, eating siege engine and is surprisingly capable in combat, using its claws and brute strength to overwhelm larger foes, right? It is what it is. It is a giant anteater. That's...
Can't get any simpler than that.
Right. We didn't all we did for this one is scale it, to be perfectly
honest. We just made it meaner
honest.
And scaled it up. Yeah.
The creature's hunger also makes it very useful in keeping the monstrous insect population under control, And many societies use a dire anteater as a deterrent against ant swarms or even ant eggs.
Because ant kegs will screw up some crops.
Sure.
But dire anteater digs down to where that ant keg is. He don't care about the
Punches
acid.
it in the face
Punches
and then
it, punches it with his long sword claws and takes it to town, right?
While generally non-aggressive, their size and destructive capabilities make domesticating them tenuous at best.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Legends speak of entire villages destroyed not by war or beasts, but by a dire anteater that tunneled beneath the ground, collapsing structures in its hunt for food. Like, it wasn't intentional.
This is a great side quest.
Yeah.
You stumble upon a town that's half in ruins, and they can't figure out what's going on, why their structures are collapsing. And the adventurers journey into the tunnels, like the sewer system beneath the town, and they find there's an infestation of giant ants or, whatever, giant spiders. Pick your, monster of the week, right? It can
Sure.
be anything, really. And it turns out that a giant anteater has roamed into town and is literally just bulldozing its way through to get to the insects because it's hungry.
I also love the idea of doing this as like a almost strictly mystery sort of idea. The anteater prefers ants. Insects. There's an insect infestation. It's eating the insects. Thus, when the buildings collapse, it doesn't eat the people. Like, they either survive the collapse or they don't, but it's not a predator because it's not predating on the humanoids.
Yeah, they may not even see it.
Right. It just keeps going because it doesn't care about those people. It was just digging to get to more ants.
There's some kind of mysterious beastie in the hills there. Every now and then you see it kind of this ripple in shape as it digs up another patch.
Sure. Speaking of mysterious creatures in the hills,
we've come to our final dire beast.
And I recognize, much like the anteater, how vile this creature could be in real life.
This is one of the most ridiculous ones we've come up with, but I love it.
Tell us all about the dire kangaroo.
All right, let's talk about the dire kangaroo, shall we? Hopping across the grasslands with a tremendous thump is a large 12-foot tall kangaroo, complete with powerful hind legs, muscular tail that could level a wagon.
Sure.
And it could.
Yeah.
Its dull red fur is festooned with gnarled, armored knobs, and both its claws and teeth look sharp enough to remove an arm. It thumps a massive foot and bounds towards you. And I want you to imagine, how studded leather armor looks like? It's got like the little balls and stuff like that. That's kind of what I imagine the dire kangaroo to look like. It's got like this reddish fur and slightly darker red studs. They're basically bony gross
Sure.
all over its body.
That's
Deflects a sword. It's nasty, right?
sure. It's awful.
Known for their ferocity and astonishing agility, these herbivores are capable of clearing huge distances in a single leap, and their claws are sharp enough to tear through steel. Gotta love it, right?
Yeah.
Dire kangaroos are territorial and aggressive, attacking anything they perceive as a threat. And by the way, kangaroos are also territorial and aggressive in many cases.
Absolutely.
Their powerful legs make them dangerous in both close and range combat, and they're known to kick boulders or enemies with devastating force.
So now they're going to kick boulders at people?
I mean, why not?
Sure.
You got these big-ass feet, you might as well.
Since we're starting to talk tactics anyway, what are the special abilities in combat for these guys?
Well, they have a thunderous kick. It can unleash a devastating kick with its hind legs, dealing bludgeoning damage. Those that fail their strength saving throw, say 16 DC or something like that, will be knocked back 20 feet and fall prone. Because when you get kicked with one of these things, you're going to know it.
Sure.
It also has a bounding leap. The dire kangaroo can jump incredible distances, like it's maybe, I don't know, a jumping creature.
Right.
As part of its movement, it can leap up to 40 feet in any direction.
That's delightful.
That's awful. If it lands within 5 feet of an enemy, it can make an immediate attack as a bonus action, dealing an additional damage for each 10 feet it traveled during the leap. So if it traveled 40 feet, then,
It's an extra 46 damage on that attack?
Yeah, something like that. Like falling
Sure.
damage, right? Nasty beastie, right? It can whip you with its tail. As a reaction, it can use its massive armored tail to block attacks or knock enemies back.
Nice.
Imagine getting hit with a club.
Sure.
That's the size of a small telephone pole.
Right.
Or at least the thickness, right?
Right.
It has boxing blades. The dire kangaroo can unleash a flurry of blows similar to Monk, doing either slashing or bludgeoning damage. And if you've ever seen a kangaroo box,
Right.
you'll know what I'm talking about. It can bite you with its teeth
Sure.
and takes huge chunks of flesh out or whatever. And of course, because it's a kangaroo, it has a giant armored pouch. It can hold up to 2 medium-sized creatures, and it is heavily armored, the pouch itself.
Sure.
Which I love.
Oh, yeah. No, that has some definite fun options. Is there anywhere in the lore that gets into that?
As a matter of fact,
Yes.
domesticated dire kangaroos are often utilized by nomadic societies as they are able to carry riders both on the back of the creature and in their protective leather pouch. You imagine a society, there's like a couple of warriors on the back, and then there's like a couple of warriors in the front just shooting with their bows or spears.
Oh, see, I was thinking the protected front was for like kids and the elderly, and then the healthy people ride on the back to defend the caravan.
I mean, you could easily do that, but I was also thinking you could have ranged combat in the front.
Sure.
Protected by the leathery pouch.
Yeah. Crossbows.
Yeah. Now, the wild kangaroos are another matter. Adventurers crossing the dry plains are advised to watch for telltale thumps in the distance, a sure sign that the dire kangaroo may be bounding toward them, ready to defend its domain. Furiously.
I like the idea of the tail sweep also having a possible trip effect.
I would definitely say that would be fun too. Curiously, dire kangaroos are especially sensitive towards large concentrations of magical energy and will generally avoid these locations if possible. Several druids have reported herds of them being driven mad by magical disturbances, turning them into marauding forces that destroy villages in their path with a flurry of thunderous kicks and punches.
Sure.
I just love the idea. I was thinking in the lore, like, these things are natural creatures, right?
Right.
And they get near a magical disturbance, maybe a powerful wizard or maybe the area of a spell battle, and they're driven crazy. And so you are wandering through the ruins of a spell battle because you want to, find crazy loot.
Sure.
And then you're attacked by a flurry of these.
Or even you're headed towards where a spell battle happened, and these things are fleeing from it, and you happen to be in the way of their flight path.
Better get out of the way.
Yep.
So there you have it. 6 delightful dire beasts for you to use in your campaign, as well as some quick and dirty rules for you to create your own dire beast if you like.
There's so many options because there's already so many animals that exist.
Pick and choose your favorite one.
Yep.
Any questions or comments, hit us up at Goblin's Corner on all the various socials. Did you enjoy this podcast? We're making them even bigger. Subscribe to them on your favorite player, YouTube and Twitch.
Click the 5 stars and give us a review on iTunes and Podchaser. On YouTube, hit the like and subscribe button. It helps get our show in front of more people, and it feeds the hungry algorithm.
Which is currently bounding towards you in the dusty plains with a lope, lope, thump, thump, lope, lope, thump, thump.
And then kicks you 40 feet into a tree.
But it's got a Joey.
Oh
What?
my God, a baby dire kangaroo would be so awesome, though.
It'd be so cute. That's all the time we have for tonight. Once again, my name is Eric.
And I'm Matt.
We'll see you next time.
Have a good night, folks.
The Goblin's Corner is written and produced by Eric Holden.
And Matt Staples.
Show song by the mighty D20.
This is a Subterranean production.
Basie.